Hey everybody, how we doing today? So, we started off with my relocation from Key West to Marathon, Florida to my new residential warehouse. Then if you watched my last video, it was kind of a bicycle, motorcycle, car tour of the island, just to kind of give you a gist of where I'm living now. Now it's time to get into the fishing, okay? And then as I mentioned in those videos, I figured it's a great opportunity to kind of take the time and kind of show you my processes for fishing a new zone, a new area. So whether it be Missouri or Oregon, Alaska, Canada, it doesn't make a difference, okay? You drop me anywhere in the world, and these are the kind of the processes that I would work through to try to get a new fishing spot figured out, all right? So for today's video, okay, we're gonna do some basic research without even leaving my new casa. Using the board of knowledge and some other tools, okay? That'll be our first step to getting started. Now, before we get started, there's one major caveat I want to bring up, and the number one way of kind of learning the fishery very efficiently, very quickly, because that's kind of the way we are, the culture these days, ours, immediate gratification, that is to hire a guide, okay? Yes, especially for down here in the Keys, it is very expensive. Minimum trip, 4-day, part-day trip, $500 to $700. Full-day trip, $1,000, $1,500 on average, okay? So it's very pricey. But you have to remember, especially for the Keys, we have a very complex fishery. We have so many target species to go after. And then each species has a specific bait that you need to use and a specific technique and a specific location to go after them. And it's just so many different variables that it'll take an extreme amount of time. And that's what the guys are doing, is to take their knowledge base and just get you right into the thick of things. So you can do that two ways. If you're just here for a quick trip, you want to bend that rod, those are the people that are going to get you that rod bedding quick and easy, no fuss, no muss. If you're down here for a while and you want to get over this curve that I'm going to be going and spending all this time over, okay, you hire a guide and give them a heads up that you want to learn about a specific fishery, and they're going to say, no problem, okay, I'll cut down the fishing time to about half, and then the other half is explaining what I'm doing and the why and wheres and so forth. And the bang for your buck is huge, and for you to understand the reason for that bang the buck, for my calculations of how much time I'm going to be putting in to learn the marathon fishery, talking about a 10-mile radius around Marathon, I'm looking at about 3,000 hours over a 2-year period for me to say I have a comfortable base knowledge of fishing this fishery, okay? And where did I come up with that, okay? What I'm looking at is basically a 7-hour fishing trip, which involves maybe an hour to A to B transport, another hour or so for getting from the launch to wherever I'm going to be fishing at, chasing bait, and so far, and then that leaves me about 3 to 4 hours of actual fish time in scouting and so forth. So basically 7 hours per day, looking at on average roughly about 4 trips per week, and then 52 weeks a year. And that basically you're looking at roughly around 1,500 hours. And that's year one, okay? And that first year is because nothing is repeatable, because everything changes. So for example, tides. Okay, just one partial part of it is tides. Tides change every single day. They move forward maybe roughly around 45 minutes. So where the tide is today is not where it's going to be at the same time tomorrow. Then you have all those other factors like the wind directions, the temperatures, the moon cycle, the level height of the tide, the seasonality of the migration of the fish that are around, the seasonal migration of the bait are around. Everything changes. So what I know today has no valid point on next week, next month, 6 months, okay? And the only way to go back to verify that what I learned today is actually valid is next year, same day, same time, same location, hopefully the same roughly external conditions, and then to verify that what worked today works next year, and then I could put it in the book that that is a valid technique for this certain spot on a certain day, okay? 3,000 hours, basic knowledge. A fishing guide a local experienced fishing guide, you're looking at 10, 15, 20 years experience, and they're going to have 20, 30,000 hours worth of knowledge base built into it on how to kind of get you on that fish, and are ready to kind of impart that basic knowledge onto you. And how much saving is that going to be towards you? So gauge that versus how much the initial cost is versus how much time I'm going to be spending that you're going to be watching, and then you're going to have to do to kind of get your own base involved there. So very important. Hire a guide. All right, let's get started. One of the things I want to show on the board of knowledge is keep in mind these core characteristics as we go through my in-casa prospecting. These are very key on what I'm looking for a good fishing spot. These are the same categories that I listed in my beginner's guide to fishing the Florida Keys, which is kind of geared towards the non-fisherman or the beginning fisherman that just wants to kind of give it a try. But these are the things that I told people to look for when they're looking for a spot to fish. And it applies still now, even though we're going to be doing some advanced style fishing. But number one is current. Current is food, okay? Basically what happens is when there's current, that means food gets flushed out from the flats, the backcountry, whatever structure. It gets pushed out into the open water, and the predator fish know that. So they'll wait in those channels, they'll wait in those outlets for that current to push food by. They'll see a shrimp go by, not interested in shrimp. Oh, there goes a crab, I don't feel like crab. Mullet, oh, mullet, yeah, and boom, they're gonna smash it. And it's basically, they could just sit in one spot and just kind of not waste any energy and just wait for the food to come to them. Versus on the other side, when there's no current or the water is stagnant, everything tends to just be where they are. And in order for those fish to find food, they have to go out and find the food. And that wastes energy, it puts them at risk of getting eaten themselves. And it's not very efficient because they have to find, just like fishing, they have to find a spot where that bait is hiding out in order to get that food. Second is structure. Structure also has to do with food, but also it means safety, and it also means efficiency. For example, for us, let's say you got dropped in the middle of just a flat sand desert, nothing around except there's just one grove of trees in this one little spot. Where are you going to go? You're going to go right towards that spot there because it's going to bring you shelter, it's going to bring you structure, and most likely it's going to be a spot where there's food and water, because why is that growing there if there has to be something? Same thing for the fish, okay? Any structure will bring security for little bait fish, and if little bait fish are there, the bigger fish will be there, and if those fish are there, the bigger fish will be there after those. So it's kind of magnetizes everything there. Third is depth, and depth also kind of involves structure, okay? So when I'm talking structure, when I'm talking depth, I'm looking at on the flats, you have the flats, but then you have the drop downs into channels. Okay, and the fish, although they go up on those flats to feed, they tend to stick around towards the edges of those channels, because if something happens, they need to skedaddle. Boom, if they're on the flats, they can only go laterally. Versus if they're next to a channel, they can just boom, jump right into the deeper water, and then they can escape a lot easier. Also, going out to the reef, you go the normal channel, 30 foot, and then you have a 70-foot drop off. Again, that goes back to a structure, okay? You have a lot of edges there where fish can kind of gravitate towards because it's kind of a safety zone. It also is a current break, so they could sit behind that while that current's ripping over them, not waste energy, but just keep an eye out for food to swim by and go up, grab it, get back down, and just hang out there. So that depth will help out with those two. And the fourth, which is not something I brought up on those earlier videos, but that kind of has to do with these populated areas, especially here in Marathon, but no different than like Key West, where you have tons of boat traffic, jet ski traffic, a lot more fishing pressure. So it should be traffic or fishing pressure. For me, okay, I find my odds are better going to places where there's not a lot of traffic and not a lot of other people fishing. I tend to find that fish tend to be a little bit more relaxed and not as skittish. That doesn't mean there's not great spots around these areas, okay, because fish get used to it just like people get used to it. I live right next to an airport. Key West basically has jets flying in and out every daylight hour. but after a while you don't even notice it. And it's same with the fish. They just know when to expect it, so they feed her earlier in the morning, later in the evening, at nighttime when there's not so much boat traffic. And also they're not so skittish about it because they know that that's what happens around this area. But I personally prefer to fish in areas that don't have a lot of traffic or fishing pressure, because like I said, I think those fish tend to be a little bit more at ease, a lot less spooky. But for me, I find it a lot more enjoyable fishing when there's not a ton of people around, not doing that combat style fishing. But in general, these are the kind of things that I'm looking for, so follow along as I'm pointing out different spots on these different areas I'm going to show you. Okay, here we go. Our first tool that we're going to use is good old Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Satellite. What this gives us a great overview of the Florida Keys. We have the lower portion of Florida and the Everglades, Key Largo on the top right, Key West on the bottom left, Marathon here right in the center. A great takeaway from this view is the layout of the keys in general. We've got the lower keys from Key West to Big Pine and the corresponding backcountry with the parallel run of islands and then the flats and channels between them. A lot of structure through there. Then you have the similar layout up here in the upper keys, basically from Isla Mirada to Key Largo in the Florida Bay here. You have a lot of little islands, channels, cuts, flats. But if you take a look, and this is very important here in the central keys right here with the Marathon area, this open swath of water here running from the Gulf of Mexico directly straight through to the Atlantic, with the only basic structure being the US 1 corridor with the islands and bridges that connect it. So all this open water here is basically 7 to 12 foot flat grassy bottom with not a lot of structure, not a lot of difference. It doesn't have this buildup of a backcountry there. So when we're talking current, it gets massive amounts of water through this section. That's why you'll see the bridges in this middle keys being 10, 15, 20 feet deep with massive currents running through them, versus the bridges that you'll see in the lower keys, which average 2, 3, maybe 5 foot at best. And that's all you get in all these little channels over here. So a lot of water pushes through these area here. So quite a bit difference between the middle keys here and the lower keys. Now as we zoom in, use our tools to start getting an overview. The second thing to look at is what we're talking about, which was our number 4 factor, which is basically fishing pressure or fishing traffic or boat traffic. If you look at Marathon proper, this is basically where I live. This is that Vaca Cut, and then the west more populated part of Marathon or Marathon proper. It is wall-to-wall houses. These are all residential and basic tourist houses here. And each one of these neighborhoods have canals running in their backyards. So pretty much, like I mentioned before, it is actually probably harder to find houses that are not backed up to a canal than it is the vice versa. And what that means is that almost all these houses have access for a boat, and the main reason why people buy these houses is because they have boating access. So that means this area here gets tons of boating traffic, okay? And when that factors in, that is a big negative. And just like Key West with all the boat traffic and jet skis running around the island, the reason why I don't fish here will be the reason why you probably won't see me fish this area here. And that includes the 7 Mile Bridge. This first part at the Marathon is because that is the wraparound for boats wanting to get to the Gulf and wanting to get to the Atlantic and vice versa coming back. They'll make this first turn, and so this first area is just boat after boat, and that does not interest me at all. Same for just crossing over to this first section here. But then as you move east of that, going out between Marathon and Long Key, you'll see the population centers drop considerably. You've got here where Duck Key, which is a very high-end tourist and residential area, but still not as populated as much as Marathon, and still open waters along here. And then you have very little populations through the Long Key all the way across here. So you'll find me most likely going to spend more quality time fishing the inshore along this category here than you will finding me around actual marathon. And that's vice versa, getting my choice of fishing this side of the 7 Mile Bridge or this side, you're going to most likely find me in this pocket area here, or more likely Bahia Honda, or more likely over here in the Old Spanish Harbor side of it. Then when we're talking my backcountry fishing, fishing the islands and flats in the backcountry, like I used to do over here in the Key West area, most likely I'll make the drive to Big Pine and No Name Key and fish these islands over here. Okay, and that'll be my similar to the back country fishing that I did in the lower Keys, or I could launch out of Bahia Honda to get out to them. Flats wise, the problem, and then I could use this as a great tool to zoom in. You have these great looking areas here. We've got channels, you've got sandy flats and cuts. Is that these are hotbeds for the partiers. So they're going to park their boats here, and weekends are just packed boat to boat and blasting radios, drinking, swimming. So those are no-goes for me for the flats fishing. But if we take a look to the east of Marathon, and the farther east we go towards these areas here, a lot less populated, a lot less traffic, but then we still have these nicer flats, channel water running through them. But look at these flats area here along Long Key, and this is a private park. Well, not it's a public park, but a pay-for park, so you're going to have a lot less traffic there, and it's a lot longer run for the boats coming out of Marathon to hit these flats areas. So you got all these areas around here, we're going to have a lot less traffic. So for flats, those are good. Now tool-wise, I could zoom into these areas and really spot check sections that I want to look for, even on the flats. All these little sandy broken bottom areas are great for the bonefish and the permit. Looking for a clean turtle grass, looking for a little bit of structure, a little bit of sand, looking for the current areas here. So all these areas look good. These wraparound areas are going to have tons of bait being flushed through them and onto the flats. And these are those safety harbor where the fish will come off the edges, work these flats areas, and then be close enough they'll jump into the channel if they feel threatened. So good opportunity there as well. Another thing I spotted was these kind of things here. These are underwater structure. They're basically little raised cuts. And that's going to provide structure in all this current barreling through here. It'll give places for fish to lay up and ambush food. So that's another good thing using this Google Earth to find all these little pockets over here and so forth. So very good tool to use, but that'll give me kind of a overview of the areas that I'm going to be spending my time down here. Speaking about the blue water and the reef, as you'll see, the reef line runs parallel with the US 1. So that aspect is pretty much going to be my same strategies I used in the lower Keys. I'll do the same here, with the exemption of that I will stay away from these areas directly south of Marathon, because that's where the majority of the people are going to instantly run straight down to the reef, drop anchor, and fish these areas here. I'll run up the Keys, down the Keys, and then head out to the reef and find less traffic and less fishing pressure there. So that is our basic overview of our strategy on areas that we're going to fish. Now another good tool to use is the Navionics web app. You can get it at the navionics.com. Free app to use. It's basically their chart viewer, so you can see exactly what is on their fish finder. But what I use it for is to take a look at more boater related structure, depths, and so forth. So here's the Marathon proper. This is kind of that dead man's area I was talking about. It's 8, 9, 10 foot. Not really much in the way regards of structure of any type here. Just flat bottom, grassy bottom, a little bit of depth as you go farther out. But also, as I was looking over here showing you on the Google Maps, I saw all these structure points showing up even though they're underwater. So these are in 6 foot, but then there's a 5 foot of relief. So they just are 1 foot below water, which will probably be showing at low tide. But that's a lot of structure that goes in that no man land. So those are all areas that I would take a look at. All of these areas here, Rabbit Keys, the actual island, got all these underwater cuts. So this will help to find those little structured areas that you might not find otherwise. But also got the information about the reefs, wrecks, and so forth in the blue water. So another good tool to use. All right, our next in-house prospecting tools are these guys, fishing maps. I've got one for the lower keys, middle keys, and upper keys. I kind of lived in each one of these areas, so I'd always go in and just buy one right off the bat, and then that would allow me to just sit at home and look for fishing spots. I've got the map up here, so I'll give you a quick little breakdown how they work. Okay, these maps are basically made for the prospecting fishermen. It gives such great information, your basic land masses, depths throughout all the different areas. But the key thing I use it for is to find that structure, the all-important structure. So they'll have all these highlighted areas which are very fishy spots, but they tend to be fishy spots because they're structures. In areas where there's really nothing here, they show these little pocket areas that will have little high spots all along here that you normally wouldn't see, and you might not see on that Google satellite, but they exist. A lot of these are rubble piles where when they're building the bridges and they don't need the concrete or the steel, they're not going to truck it back to the mainland, so they take it out on a barge and dump it out in the ocean. And of course, in an area that has nothing, then you drop this amount of structure there, it attracts the fish, the bait, everything follows. So those little rock piles, steel piles are all wrecks. They're all marked on here. The other things that they have them categorized is by species. So you have this fishing index by the different types of fish here. And then if you're looking for the month of the year, and then they give you a good, moderate, high in regards to your chances of catching. And then you can look at the corresponding area on the map. So if you want a snapper spot, you look for the X's. And then wherever they have a high spot on the X's, you look for the corresponding number. And it'll say, oh, number 30 here is a hot snapper spot, or bonefish, or permit, or whatever. So it does help you there. Now, these aren't secret fishing holes, since anybody that has 20 bucks can have your secret spot. But it makes a difference in that it gives you places to kind of look and take a look at it. Because when you're above water, you can't see the structure down below. Otherwise, you're just fishing some just barren land with nothing, and there is nothing. So this will help to highlight those areas, gives the depths, gives those spots, gives the kind of the species, what time of the month they're around. So they're excellent tools for those people that are doing just what we're doing today, prospecting. Okay, now I'm going to do is take my tools and do a bunch of recon, checking out all the different areas there, and I'm going to create grids, okay, sections that I find that are going to be fishable areas that I want to try first, my primary areas. So like I know next to this duck key area here, this edge of the long key over here, out here in these little pocket areas, some of these wrecks out here and rubble piles, the bridges and the 7-mile bridges on the west end, and then the islands up here in the Big Pine. So I'll kind of categorize those, and then once I've got those set up, then the next step will be the launch spots. How do I get to those areas and the best places to launch from? And to be honest with you, I know that's going to be a huge problem, but that'll be an upcoming video as well. So that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of the night. Well, not for the rest of the night. I've got a backlog of stuff to do. Dang it! Let me show you. And here's the biggest reason for a lot of non-fishing. The All About the Bait store is killing me. Great for the money, but bad for the fishing. These are today. I got a bunch of the plain, no logoed, hooded and non-hooded fishing shirts. I get about 3 orders a week of these. They come unpackaged, so I have to fold them, bag them, and prep them for shipping. Rough there, hate folding. I got about 100 or so of the Boonie flap hats, the fishing hats. I was getting low in stock on those. And then about 140 pounds of yellowtail snapper jigs. So I have to check all those in, and then I've got a few big orders that have to go out where I need to sort them, make mix packs. I also have to make a run down to Key West, fill up Esky Rods because I've been out of these, so I got to fill their racks up. Oh, rough business. AllAboutTheBait.com. Alrighty, so that is Prospecting 101. That's our start. Just basically looking at places to fish. Have no clue if there is fish there, but those are going to be my primary areas that I'm going to be hitting. Only way to tell is head out there at low tide, mid tide, high tide, in the morning, at nighttime, sunny day, cloudy day, rainy day, wind blowing from the east, the north, the south, the west, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. So those are all the variables for one spot. But you never know unless you try. So that's a good first step though. So anyways, thanks for watching, and I will see you next video. Bye.